Stop what you're doing for a moment, because what I'm about to tell you isn't something you're going to hear on the news. It's not something trending on social media. And it's definitely not something most people are paying attention to right now, even though it's already happening to them beneath the surface.
Planetary Parade Portal, new version script. Stop what you're doing for a moment. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't something you're going to hear on the news. It's not something trending on social media. And it's definitely not something most people are paying attention to right now, even though it's already happening to them beneath the surface, whether they notice it or not. There is a planetary alignment active right now, and I don't say that to excite you or to create hype around something vague. I say it because the specific combination of planets in alignment today creates a convergence of energy that the human experience genuinely responds to. Whether you believe in astrology, whether you see planets as archetypes, whether you simply feel like something is different today and you can't explain why, you're not imagining it. This isn't an ordinary day. And the reason I can say that with confidence is because of what's specifically aligning, how rarely it happens in this exact configuration, and what that configuration tends to activate in the people who are paying attention when it opens. Because not everyone catches a window like this. Most people walk straight through it without realizing a portal was ever there. But you're here, you clicked, you stayed, that means something. So let's talk about what's really happening today, not the surface-level version, the deeper one, the one that actually applies to your life. Section 1. The people who are being quietly rewarded right now. Let me start with something that most people miss when they talk about alignments like this. Everyone assumes that cosmic energy rewards the most visible people, the loudest ones, the ones who seem to have it all together on the outside, the ones with the followers, the ones who appear confident, the ones whose lives look polished from a distance. But that's not how this works. And today, specifically today, the energy in this alignment doesn't flow toward performance. It flows toward depth. There is a category of people who have been walking a very quiet path. These are the ones who process their pain privately, who rebuilt themselves without an audience, who did the internal work, the grief work, the unbecoming work without anyone cheering them on, not because they wanted to be secretive, but because the work required silence to get done. These people didn't post about their healing. They just healed. They didn't announce their growth. They just grew. And because the world didn't see it, some of them started to wonder if it even counted. Today answers that question. The alignment currently active rewards internal structure over external applause. It recognizes what was built in the quiet. And the people who spent years developing discipline, patience, emotional intelligence, and self-awareness while nobody was watching are the ones who are going to feel this energy the most profoundly. If you've been the quiet one, the one rebuilding, the one processing, the one walking alone while it seemed like everyone else was running, this window is specifically designed to show you something. That path wasn't a detour. That silence wasn't a punishment. It was preparation. You didn't fall behind. You were developing something the louder world didn't have time to build. And what happens when internal depth meets a moment of cosmic amplification is almost impossible to explain until it happens. But those who have felt it describe it the same way every time, like something finally fitting into place, like a long silence that suddenly makes sense, like arriving somewhere you didn't realize you'd been heading the whole time. If that resonates, stay with it. Because what's being activated in people like you right now goes much deeper than confidence or motivation. It goes all the way down to identity. Section 2. The one thing you need to protect today. Now I want to talk about something that sounds simple, but is actually one of the most important pieces of advice you'll hear during any high-frequency window like this. Protect your mental environment. I'm not talking about meditation, although that helps. I'm not telling you to go sit in the woods, although silence is powerful. What I mean is this. During a planetary alignment like today's, your nervous system is already processing more than it normally does. Your perception is heightened. Your internal sensitivity is turned up. You are more receptive to direction, to clarity, to insight, but only if you give it enough room to reach you. And the enemy of that clarity isn't negativity. It isn't bad luck. It isn't even stress. The enemy is noise. Noise is the crowded conversation that pulls you out of your center. Noise is the notification that fragments your focus right when it was finally coming together. Noise is the environment that demands your energy outward when everything inside you is trying to move inward. Cognitive science already tells us that heightened states of awareness, whether created by sleep, environment, emotion, or symbolic frameworks like today's alignment, make us more sensitive to both positive and negative stimuli. What that means in plain language is this. Today, good environments will feel better than usual, and disruptive ones will feel worse than usual. So if there was ever a day to step away from the chaos, this is it. Reduce the noise, protect your energy, create even 30 minutes of internal space somewhere in your day and use it intentionally. Not to scroll, not to worry, not to analyze everything, just to be still enough to notice what's already trying to emerge. Because here's the thing about clarity. It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't fight for your attention. It simply waits until the noise steps aside. And when it does, you don't receive clarity so much as you remember it, like it was always there and you just stopped being distracted long enough to see it. That's what this window offers. Not answers delivered from the sky, just enough stillness for the answers already inside you to finally be heard. But to hear them, you have to create the conditions. And that starts with what you choose to let into your space today. Guard it, because the next thing this alignment activates requires your full internal attention. Section 3. The second awakening nobody warned you about. Let me say something that I want you to sit with before you react to it. Most people have a first awakening. There's a moment, maybe it came through loss, through a breakup, through a period of being completely alone, or through a moment of truth so sharp it changed the lens you see through permanently, where you wake up. Where the old version of the story you were telling yourself stops being believable. Where you realize that what you were chasing wasn't actually what you wanted, and what you wanted was something much quieter and much realer than anything you'd been running after. That's a first awakening. A second one is different. The second awakening doesn't break you open the same way. It doesn't arrive through catastrophe. It doesn't announce itself dramatically. It comes in through the side door, quietly, as a kind of remembering. Like picking up a thread you dropped a long time ago and realizing you know exactly where it leads. The second awakening is the integration of everything the first one started. And what this alignment creates, specifically the convergence of energies active today, is the ideal condition for a second awakening to unfold. Because what it does is take all the internal work you've been doing and begin to crystallize it. All the questioning, the undoing, the sitting with uncomfortable truths, the rebuilding, the choosing differently, the slow and invisible growth, it starts to condense into something coherent. Something with a direction. If you've been feeling lately like you're on the edge of something but you can't name it, this is why. If you've been sensing that something is about to shift without knowing what it is, this is the mechanism behind that feeling. The internal material is there. The awareness is there. The groundwork has been laid. What today's energy does is apply enough pressure, gently, not forcefully, to transform that raw material into clarity. Some of you will feel this as a sudden understanding of something you've been confused about. Some of you will feel it as a decision becoming obvious that used to feel impossible. Some of you won't feel anything dramatic today, but will notice over the next several days that something in you has quietly realigned. That's the second awakening, not a lightning bolt, a sunrise, slow, steady, and ultimately illuminating everything it touches. Section 4. The strange energy surge and what it actually means. Now let's talk about something more physical, something you might have already noticed today and wondered about. There's a kind of energy that moves through people during high alignment windows that is hard to categorize. It's not anxiety. It's not caffeine. It's not the ordinary burst of motivation you get after a good night's sleep. It's something more sustained, more even, more electric at its edges. Some people describe it as mental clarity that arrived out of nowhere. Others describe it as a physical aliveness, a feeling like every cell is running a little more efficiently. Others notice that their creative ideas are moving faster. That projects they'd been avoiding suddenly feel approachable. That focus comes without effort in a way it usually requires struggle to achieve. And then some people notice the opposite, a kind of heaviness, a tiredness that isn't physical, a reluctance to engage, a sense of emotional weight that seems disproportionate to what's actually happening. Here's what's important to understand about both of those experiences. They're both valid, and they're both telling you something. The surge of energy, the creativity, the unusual clarity, that's your system responding to the amplification this alignment creates. It's like a frequency upgrade that activates the parts of you that were ready to move. If you've been feeling this, use it. Not by scattering in every direction, but by directing it deliberately toward the thing that most needs your attention. The heaviness, the fatigue, the emotional weight, that's your system processing. When alignment energy moves through you, it doesn't only activate what's ready. It also surfaces what needs to be released. The emotional weight you might be feeling today isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is being cleared. In either case, the instruction is the same. Don't fight it. If you're energized, move with intention. If you're heavy, allow the processing without judgment. Both are forms of the alignment doing what it's designed to do, which is bring you closer to your own internal truth by removing whatever has been obscuring it. Energy doesn't appear from nothing. It emerges when the internal conditions are finally right for movement. And regardless of whether the alignment caused it or simply synchronized with it, the movement is real. And the question isn't where it came from. The question is what you're going to do with it. Section 5. The hidden test you are currently being given. Here's where I need to say something that most people skip over in conversations like this, because it's less exciting and more uncomfortable. There's a planetary force involved in today's alignment that doesn't deal in beauty or expansion or spiritual elevation. It deals in accountability, and it doesn't care how inspired you feel or how aligned your intentions are. It only cares whether you're doing the work. That force is Saturn, and whenever Saturn plays a role in a major alignment, which it does today, the energy of the window doesn't just open doors. It evaluates whether you're ready to walk through them. Saturn is the force that looks at the gap between what you say you want and what you actually do. It examines the distance between your stated priorities and where your time actually goes. It exposes the places where you've been telling yourself a story about growth while quietly avoiding the thing that would actually create it. Saturn doesn't punish, but it doesn't flatter either. It simply reflects reality with a clarity that is uncomfortable to sit with. And here's what that looks like on a practical level today. You might feel confronted by a pattern you've been aware of but not honestly addressing. You might suddenly see very clearly the commitment you've been halfway keeping or the decision you've been delaying disguised as waiting for the right time. You might feel an unusual transparency with yourself, where all the things you've been telling yourself to justify staying comfortable suddenly sound much less convincing. That's Saturn doing its work. And here's the part that actually matters. Saturn rewards maturity fast. This isn't about perfection. It isn't about having it all figured out. It's about showing up with honesty. It's about taking even one real step toward the thing you've been circling instead of approaching. Because Saturn doesn't require that you arrive. It only requires that you begin moving with integrity. The people who experience breakthroughs during alignments like this are not the ones with the most talent or the most resources or the most perfect plans. They're the ones who looked at themselves honestly, acknowledged the gap, and chose to close it by even 1 inch. That 1 inch is what Saturn is looking for, and when it finds it, the acceleration that follows is significant. Today is a prove-it day, not to the world, to yourself. Not dramatically, not all at once, just one honest, consistent, intentional move in the direction you already know you need to go. That's all it takes to shift the trajectory. That's all Saturn is asking for. Section 6. The abundance frequency quietly running beneath everything. Let me shift gears now and talk about something that most people don't think about during planetary alignments, but that this particular window has a very specific relationship with. Money, or more precisely, your relationship with value. Whenever Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn converge in the same energetic window, which is the case in today's alignment, there is an undertone that runs beneath all the spiritual and emotional themes. A quiet recalibration happening in the parts of your mind that think about resources, worth, and long-term stability. And it doesn't show up as a lottery win or a check in the mail. It shows up as a shift in how you think. Venus brings awareness. It makes you more conscious of what you actually value versus what you've been spending your energy pursuing. Jupiter expands that awareness outward, so instead of just seeing what you desire, you start seeing what's possible. Not in a vague, wishful way, but in a practical, architectural way, like suddenly being able to see the blueprint of something you previously only had a daydream of. And then Saturn comes in and asks the question that makes it real. Are you willing to build it? Not talk about it, not vision board it, build it, consistently, imperfectly, over time. What this alignment tends to create in people who are paying attention is a quiet but significant shift in their relationship to abundance. The fog around financial or creative blind spots begins to lift. Patterns of undervaluing, undercharging, underasking, underestimating what their time and work are worth become suddenly more visible, not as judgment, but as information. And the realizations that come through aren't dramatic. They're more like, oh, I've been treating this like it's too much to ask for. Why? Or, I've been waiting for permission to charge what this is actually worth. Or even just a simple, quiet recognition that the way you've been thinking about money is smaller than the life you're trying to build. That recognition is the beginning of something. Abundance doesn't expand the moment you ask for more. It expands the moment you stop shrinking to deserve less. This alignment creates conditions for that internal expansion. And the best part is that it doesn't come with pressure or urgency or a deadline. It comes with clarity. And clarity, once arrived, doesn't leave. If you're feeling a new sharpness around your finances, your worth, or your long-term vision today, don't dismiss it as a passing thought. That's the frequency working. That's the invitation being extended. How you respond to it over the next few days will say a lot about what the next season of your life looks like. Section 7. Why this portal doesn't disrupt, it synchronizes. I want to address something that comes up every time a significant alignment is discussed. Fear. People hear planetary alignment, and their nervous system reads it as a warning. They brace for disruption. They prepare for turbulence. They expect something to fall apart or get complicated or turn everything upside down. And here's what I want you to understand about today's energy specifically. This isn't a disruptive portal, it's a synchronizing one. Disruptive alignments do exist. Retrogrades, squares, oppositions, these are planetary configurations that tend to create friction, expose cracks, and push you toward change through discomfort. Today is not that. What's happening today is more like 6 different musical instruments finally agreeing on the same key. It's alignment in the truest sense of the word, things coming into cooperation rather than conflict. And when the planetary archetypes work in cooperation, what you feel isn't turbulence. You feel something settling. And settling might be one of the most underrated feelings there is. Because when things settle internally, when the indecision quiets, when the competing voices inside you stop fighting for control, when the direction becomes clear instead of fragmented, everything gets easier. Choices that felt impossible start feeling obvious. Relationships that felt complicated start revealing what they actually are. Projects that felt overwhelming start organizing themselves into manageable steps, not because the world changed, but because the internal noise dropped enough to let clarity emerge. This is why some people describe high alignment days as some of the most productive and peaceful of their year. Not because nothing happened, but because the right things finally cooperated. And if you've been feeling scattered lately, like you've been trying to move in 12 directions at once and none of them feel fully right, today's energy is specifically designed to address that. Not by choosing your direction for you, but by quieting the noise long enough for your own instincts to surface. Trust what surfaces today. Trust the clarity that arrives without pressure. Trust the direction that feels steady rather than exciting. Excitement fades, steady lasts. And what's being laid down today, quietly and internally, will carry you further into what's coming than any dramatic pivot ever could. Section 8, the next 7 days, what the echo looks like. Here's something most people don't understand about alignments. They don't end at midnight. What happens during a significant planetary window is more like a stone being dropped into water. The initial drop is today, but the ripples move outward from here, touching more and more surface area as they travel. And the effects don't peak immediately. They develop. Over the next 7 days, what was activated today will begin to appear in the visible parts of your life. The clarity that started forming internally today will show up in your conversations tomorrow. The decision that began feeling obvious this afternoon will be made concrete this week. The thing you were almost ready to commit to, but couldn't quite pull the trigger on, will suddenly feel less like a risk and more like the natural next step. Decisions will move faster, not because you're being rushed, but because the hesitation that used to slow everything down has less energy behind it. When internal resistance drops, momentum fills the space. And what you'll notice is that things that felt stuck for months begin moving in days. You might also find yourself having unusually honest conversations. Not confrontational ones, not dramatic revelations, but the kind of honesty that clarifies things, where what was fuzzy between you and someone else suddenly becomes clear, where you say the thing you've been trying to find words for and the words come easily, where a situation you've been overthinking resolves without the elaborate effort you thought it would require. Truth surfaces during this echo window, not harsh truth, clarifying truth, the kind that simplifies rather than complicates. And then there's the longer thread that this week weaves into March. Because this alignment doesn't just close a chapter, it opens the next one. Everything that felt unresolved in February, the energy that felt scattered, the projects that felt half-finished, the clarity that kept arriving and then disappearing before you could act on it, all of that is being gathered up right now. The loose threads are being pulled into one coherent direction, and what begins in the next 7 days will determine the tone of the next 3 months. That's the scale of this window. So don't think of today as a single event. Think of it as the beginning of a recalibration. One that started today, that will reveal itself gradually, and that rewards the people who continue showing up with presence and intention even after the hype of the alignment has passed. Because the portal is not a moment, the portal is a direction, and you're already walking in it. Section 9, the final piece, what this is really about. I want to end with something that matters more to me than anything else in this video. Because everything I've talked about, the quiet ones being rewarded, the clarity that comes with stillness, the second awakening, the energy surge, the Saturn accountability, the abundance frequency, the synchronization, the echo window, all of it points to the same thing. You. Not the planets, not the cosmic forces, not the portal, the alignment, the window, or any of the frameworks we use to make sense of moments like this. The reason alignments like today's carry so much weight is because they serve as mirrors. They give you permission to look at yourself honestly. They give you a reason to stop, to be still, to ask what's actually true about where you are and where you're going. And the truth is, you didn't need a planetary alignment to start doing that, but you needed something. And sometimes the something that helps us look inward is a story, a framework, a symbol, a moment that feels significant enough to pause for. If today felt significant to you, if something shifted, if something clarified, if something inside you moved even slightly toward a truth you've been circling, then the alignment did its job. Not because 6 planets caused it, but because you were already ready. You'd already done enough internal work that the slightest invitation was enough to open the door. The alignment didn't build what was in there. You did. Quietly, privately, consistently, without anyone watching. You built something real. And today, this moment, this window, it's just the universe handing you back a reflection of that. You've been more prepared for what's coming than you've been giving yourself credit for. The work you did in silence wasn't wasted. The path you walked alone wasn't punishment. The seasons where nothing appeared to be happening were the seasons where everything essential was being built underground. And now, right now, in this alignment, in this window, in this moment, the roots are deep enough. The foundation is ready, and what grows from here has been earned. Whatever comes in March, let it meet you fully. Not braced, not anxious, not waiting to see if you deserve it. Grounded, present, aligned, and more ready than you know. If this resonated with you today, stay with what came up. Don't scroll past it. Don't let the moment close without writing something down, making a decision, or simply acknowledging what you felt. Because awareness without action is just awareness, and you deserve more than that. Thank you for being here. For the ones who stayed quiet while they were becoming, this one was for you.